Carlos Fuentes Macías Audio was a Mexican novelist and essayist. Among his works are The Death of Artemio Cruz, or Terra Nostra, The Old Gringa, and Christopher Unborn. In his obituary, the New York Times described Fuentes as one of the most admired writers in the Spanish-speaking world and an important influence on the Latin American boom, the explosion of Latin American literature in the 1960s and 70s, while The Guardian called him Mexico's most celebrated novelist. His many literary honors include the Miguel de Cervantes Prize as well as Mexico's highest award, the Belisario Domínguez Medal of Honor. He was often named as a likely candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature, though he never won. Biography. Fuentes was born in Panama City to Berta Macías and Rafael Fuentes, the latter of whom was a Mexican diplomat. As the family moved for his father's career, Fuentes spent his childhood in various Latin American capital cities, an experience he later described as giving him the ability to view Latin America as a critical outsider. From 1934 to 1940, Fuentes' father was posted to the Mexican embassy in Washington, D.C., where Carlos attended English language school, eventually becoming fluent. He also began to write during this time, creating his own magazine, which he shared with apartments on his block. In 1938, Mexico nationalized foreign oil holdings, leading to a national outcry in the U.S. and Fuentes' ostracism by his American classmates. He later pointed to the event as the moment in which he began to understand himself as Mexican. In 1940, the Fuentes family was transferred to Santiago, Chile. Carlos first became interested in socialism, which would become one of his lifelong passions, in part through his interest in the poetry of Pablo Neruda. He lived in Mexico for the first time at the age of 16, when he went to study law at the National Autonomous University of Mexico in Mexico City with an eye toward a diplomatic career. During this time, he also began working at the daily newspaper, and writing short stories. He later attended the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva. In 1957, Fuentes was named head of cultural relations at the Secretariat of Foreign Affairs. The following year, he published Where the Air is Clear, which immediately made him a national celebrity and allowed him to leave his diplomatic post to write full-time. In 1959, he moved to Havana in the wake of the Cuban Revolution, where he wrote pro-Castro articles and essays. The same year, he married Mexican actress Rita Macedo. Considered dashingly handsome, Fuentes also had high-profile affairs with actresses Jeanne Moreau and Jean Seberg, the latter of whom inspired his novel Diana, the Goddess Who Hunts Alone. His second marriage, to journalist Sylvia Lemus, lasted until his death. Fuentes served as Mexico's ambassador to France from 1975 to 1977, resigning in protest of former President Gustavo Díaz Ordaz's appointment as ambassador to Spain. He also taught at Cambridge, Brown, Princeton, Harvard, Columbia, University of Pennsylvania, Dartmouth, and Cornell. His friends included Louise Bunwell, William Styron, Friedrich Dürrenmatt, and sociologist C. Wright Mills, to whom he dedicated his book The Death of Artemio Cruz. Once good friends with Nobel-winning Mexican poet Octavio Paz, Fuentes became estranged from him in the 1980s in a disagreement over the Sandinistas, whom Fuentes supported. In 1988, Paz's magazine Vuelta carried an attack by Enrique Krauze on the legitimacy of Fuentes' Mexican identity, opening a feud between Paz and Fuentes that lasted until Paz's 1998 death. In 1989, he was the subject of a full-length PBS television documentary, Crossing Borders: The Journey of Carlos Fuentes, which also aired in Europe and was broadcast repeatedly in Mexico. Fuentes fathered 3 children. Only one of them survived him. Cecilia Fuentes Macedo, born in 1962. Her son, Carlos Fuentes Lemus, died from complications associated with hemophilia in 1999 at the age of 25. A daughter, Natasha Fuentes Lemus, died of an apparent drug overdose in Mexico City on August 22, 2005, at the age of 30. Writing. Fuentes described himself as a pre-modern writer, using only pens, ink and paper. He asked, "Do words need anything else?" Fuentes said that he detested those authors who from the beginning claim to have a recipe for success. In a speech on his writing process, he related that when he began the writing process, he began by asking, "Who am I writing for?" Fuentes' first novel, Where the Air is Clear, was an immediate success. The novel is built around the story of Federico Robles, who has abandoned his revolutionary ideals to become a powerful financier, but also offers a kaleidoscopic presentation of vignettes of Mexico City, making it as much a biography of the city as of an individual man. The novel was celebrated not only for its prose, which made heavy use of interior monologue and explorations of the subconscious, but also for its stark portrait of inequality and moral corruption in modern Mexico. A year later, he followed with another novel, The Gird Conscience, which depicted the privileged middle classes of a medium-sized town, probably modeled on Guanajuato, described by a contemporary reviewer as the classic Marxist novel. It tells the story of a privileged young man whose impulses toward social equality are suffocated by his family's materialism. Fuentes' best-known novel, The Death of Artemio Cruz, appeared in 1962 and is today widely regarded as a seminal work of modern Spanish-American literature. Like many of his works, the novel used rotating narrators, a technique critic Karen Hardy described as demonstrating the complexities of a human and national personality. The novel is heavily influenced by Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, and attempts literary parallels to Welles' techniques, including close-up, cross-cutting, deep focus, and flashback. Like Kane, the novel begins with the titular protagonist on his deathbed. The story of Cruz's life is then filled in by flashbacks as the novel moves between past and present. Cruz is a former soldier of the Mexican Revolution who has become wealthy and powerful through violence, blackmail, bribery, and brutal exploitation of the workers. The novel explores the corrupting effects of power and criticizes the distortion of the revolutionaries' original aims through class domination, Americanization, financial corruption, and failure of land reform. Fuentes' 1975 Terra Nostra, perhaps his most ambitious novel, is a massive Byzantine work that tells the story of all Hispanic civilization. Modeled on James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, Terra Nostra shifts unpredictably between the 16th century and the 20th, seeking the roots of contemporary Latin American society in the struggle between the conquistadors and indigenous Americans. Like Artemio Cruz, the novel also draws heavily on cinematic techniques. The novel won the Xavier Villarrucha Award in 1976 and the Venezuelan Romulo Gallegos Prize in 1977. His 1985 novel The Old Gringa, loosely based on American author Ambrose Bierce's disappearance during the Mexican Revolution, became the first U.S. bestseller written by a Mexican author. The novel tells the story of Harriet Winslow, a young American woman who travels to Mexico and finds herself in the company of an aging American journalist and Tomás Arroyo, a revolutionary general. Like many of Fuentes' works, it explores the way in which revolutionary ideals become corrupted, as Arroyo chooses to pursue the deed to an estate where he once worked as a servant rather than follow the goals of the revolution. In 1989, the novel was adapted into the U.S. film Old Gringo starring Gregory Peck, Jane Fonda, and Jimmy Smits. A long profile of Fuentes in the U.S. magazine Mother Jones describes the filming of The Old Gringa in Mexico with Fuentes on the set. Mexican historian Enrique Krauze was a vigorous critic of Fuentes and his fiction, dubbing him a guerrilla dandy in a 1988 article for the perceived gap between his Marxist politics and his personal lifestyle. Krauze accused Fuentes of selling out to the pre-government and being out of touch with Mexico, exaggerating its people to appeal to foreign audiences. There is the suspicion in Mexico that Fuentes merely uses Mexico as a theme, distorting it for a North American public, claiming credentials that he does not have. The essay, published in Octavio Paz's magazine Vuelta, began a feud between Paz and Fuentes that lasted until Paz's death. Following Fuentes' death, however, Krauze described him to reporters as one of the most brilliant writers of the 20th century. Fuentes' works have been translated into 24 languages. He remained prolific to the end of his life, with an essay on the new government of France appearing in Reformer newspaper on the day of his death. Political views. The Los Angeles Times described Fuentes' politics as moderate liberal, noting that he criticized the excesses of both the left and the right. Fuentes was a long-standing critic of the institutional Revolutionary Party government that ruled Mexico between 1929 and the election of Vicente Fox in 2000, and later of Mexico's inability to reduce drug violence. He has expressed his sympathies with the Zapatista rebels in Chiapas. Fuentes was also critical of U.S. foreign policy, including Ronald Reagan's opposition to the Sandinistas, George W. Bush's anti-terrorism tactics, U.S. immigration policy, and the role of the U.S. in the Mexican drug war. His politics caused him to be blocked from entering the United States until a congressional intervention in 1967. Once, after being denied permission to travel to a 1963 New York City book release party, he responded, "The real bombs are my books, not me." Much later in his life, he commented that the United States is very good at understanding itself and very bad at understanding others. The U.S. State Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation closely monitored Fuentes during the 1960s, purposefully delaying, and often denying, the author's visa applications. Fuentes' FBI file, released on June 20, 2013, reveals that the FBI's upper echelons were interested in Fuentes' movements because of the writer's suspected communist leanings and criticism of the Vietnam War. Longtime FBI Associate Director Clyde Tolson was copied on several updates about Fuentes. Initially a supporter of Fidel Castro's Cuban Revolution, Fuentes turned against Castro after being branded a traitor to Cuba in 1965 for attending a New York conference and the 1971 imprisonment of poet Gilberto Badillo by the Cuban government. The Guardian described him as accomplishing the rare feat for a left-wing Latin American intellectual of adopting a critical attitude towards Fidel Castro's Cuba without being dismissed as a pawn of Washington. Fuentes also criticized Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez, dubbing him a tropical Mussolini. Fuentes' last message on Twitter read, "There must be something beyond slaughter and barbarism to support the existence of mankind and we must all help search for it. Death. On May 15, 2012, Fuentes died in Angeles del Pedregal Hospital in southern Mexico City from a massive hemorrhage. He had been brought there after his doctor had found him collapsed in his Mexico City home. Mexican President Felipe Calderón wrote on Twitter, "I am profoundly sorry for the death of our loved and admired Carlos Fuentes, writer and universal Mexican. Rest in peace." Nobel laureate Mario Vargas Llosa stated, "With him, we lose a writer whose work and whose presence left a deep imprint." French President François Hollande called Fuentes a great friend of our country, and stated that Fuentes had defended with ardor a simple and dignified idea of humanity. Salman Rushdie tweeted, "Rip Carlos, my friend." Fuentes received a state funeral on May 16, with his funeral cortege briefly stopping traffic in Mexico City. The ceremony was held in the Palacio de Bellas Artes and was attended by President Calderón. List of works. Novels. La Region Más Transparente, ISBN 97897-No-5800146. Las Buenas Conciencias, ISBN 97897-No-710046. Or ISBN 9789684111813. La Muerte de Artemio Cruz, ISBN 9780374522834. Cambio de Piel. Zona Sagrada. Cumpleaños. Terra Nostra. La Cabeza de la Hidra. Una Familia Lejana. Gringo Viejo. Cristobal Nonato. Ceremonias del Alba. The Campaign. Diana o la Cazadora Solitaria. La Frontera de Cristal. Los Años con Laura Diaz. Instinto de Renas. La Silla del Aguila. Todas las Familias Felices, ISBN 98704055576. La Voluntad y la Fortuna, ISBN 9781400688807. Aiden N. Ede Acute N. Vlad. Federico Ensu-Bulkin. Short Stories. Los Días Enmascarados. Cantar de Ciegos. Chacmul y otros cuentos. Agua Quemada, ISBN 96816157778. Dos Educations. ISBN 84397172888. El Naranjo. Inquieta Campaña. Las dos Elenas. El Hijo de Andre Aparicio. Essays. La Nueva Novela Hispanoamericana, ISBN 96827014222. El Mundo de José Luis Cuevas. Casa con dos Poetas. Tiempo Mexicano. Miguel de Cervantes o la Crítica de la Lectura. Myself with Others. El Espejo Enterrado, ISBN 84306026558. Geografía de la Novela, ISBN 96816404446. Tres Discursos para dos Aldeas, ISBN 950-557-195-X. Nuevo Tiempo Mexicano, ISBN 96819-02319. Retratos en el Tiempo, with Carlos Fuentes Lemus. Los Cinco Soles de Mexico. Memoria de un Milenio, ISBN 843221063-3. En esto creo, ISBN 970-5800871. Contribution, ISBN 968191450-3. Los 68, ISBN 0307274152. Personas, ISBN 0307274152. Theater Todos los Gatos Unpardos. El Tuerto es Rey, Los Reinos Originarios, Teatro Hispano-Mexicano, Orquídeas a las de la Luna, Comedia Mexicana, Ceremonias del Alba, Screenplays No Ois Ladra Los Perros, Pedro Páramo, Los Caifanes, Un Alma Pura, Tiempo de Mora, Las Dos Elenas, El Gallo d'Oro, Awards and Recognition, 1967 Biblioteca Breve Award for A Change of Skin, 1972 Member of the Colegio Nacional, 1972 Mazatlan Literature Prize for Tiempo Mexicano, 1976 Xavier Villa Arusha Award for Terra Nostra, 1977 Romulo Gallegos Prize for Terra Nostra, 1979 Alfonso Reyes International Prize, 1983 Honorary Doctorate granted by Harvard University, 1984 Mexican National Prize for Arts and Sciences, 1984 Massey Lecture, 1987 Miguel de Cervantes Prize, 1987 Honorary Doctorate granted by the University of Cambridge, 1989 Instituto Italo-Latino-Americano Award for the Old Gringo, 1992 National Order of Merit of France, 1992 Menende Pelayo International Prize, 1993 Commander of the Order of Merit of Chile, 1993 Honorary Doctorate granted by Tufts University, 1994 Grinzane Cavour Prize, 1994 Prince of Asturias Award, 1994 UNESCO's Pablo Picasso Medal, 1999 Belisario Domínguez Medal of Honor, 2001 Honorary Member of the Mexican Academy of Language, 2004 Prize of the Real Academia Española for Ernesto Creo, 2005 Galileo 2000 Prize, 2006 for Freedom's Award for Freedom of Speech and Expression, 2006 Huizinga Lecture, 2008 International Don Quijote de la Mancha Prize, 2009 Great Cross of the Order of Isabella the Catholic, 2011 Prix Mentor, 2012 Creation of the Carlos Fuentes International Prize for Literary Creation in the Spanish Language by the Mexican Government.